You guys know me. I root for the superhero flicks and the superhero video games. I want to enjoy these things all the time, and I really did enjoy the first Shazam movie. And I was looking forward to Shazam Fury of the Gods. It was on my 23 for 2023 video as one of the projects I was most looking forward to this year. Now, I'm going to dig into this in a non-spoiler review, but after I've scored it, I'm going to talk about a couple of spoilery elements. So stick around if you want to hear about those, or skip them if you don't. I'm glad that I've seen it, but I have to tell you that I didn't enjoy this movie anywhere near the amount that I enjoyed the first Shazam, and I think there's a couple of reasons for this. Actually, there's several reasons for this, and I think namely it is all of the cast members that have to be included in a Shazam family story. Now, family was the key ingredient for the first Shazam film because we were introduced to Billy Batson and his sort of integration into this foster family, and then also claiming his superpowers and coming to grips with all of these new abilities that he had, but also his sort of understanding of his place within this new family that he was a part of. And at the end of that first film, spoiler alert for anybody that hasn't seen that first one, but it's all over the marketing for this new movie, everybody in Billy Batson's foster family ends up having superpowers. And so now we've got a family of superpowered Shazam characters that all have these incredible abilities, be able to shoot lightning out of their hands and fly and have super speed, all the powers of Shazam, but they also have these kid counterparts. And so we have to spend time with the kids in the foster family, and we have to see them as superheroes. And we've got the mom and the dad that have to reconcile with the fact that they have these kids that keep disappearing. And then we're also introduced to a trio of supervillains. And then there's some other surprises in this movie as well. So you basically have this cavalcade of different personalities and different people of different stages of their lives that we have to kind of keep track of within a 2-hour movie. And of course, everything has to be escalated in this new movie. The threats are bigger and badder and bolder, and the effects are incredible. And so it is just a noisy, messy experience after 2 hours. There's some beautiful work in this movie for sure, especially I think visually this is a much better looking movie. All of the superpower effects just look incredible, and there's some really cool massive scale threats with all of these metaphysical beings running rampant across the city and terrorizing all kinds of people. They had a little bit of that in the first movie, but it felt like they were cobbling it together with some scotch tape and band-aids. This time it feels a lot more nuanced and a lot more polished. I'm talking effects-wise, but story, this thing goes all over the place. We've got these 3 daughters of Atlas that have come to Earth looking for magic that has been taken away from them. And one of them is a little benign, and a couple of them are a little bit more malevolent, and they're out to do whatever they have to get their powers back. And so they terrorize people. The more benevolent of these daughters, played by Rachel Zegler, is much more charming, and she's also has a lot more empathy for the human plight and the human condition. She befriends Freddie Freeman at the high school that they both go to, and there's some somewhat charming scenes between the two of them. She clearly admires him and his ability to grapple with the circumstances that are beyond his control and stand up to people. And of course, Freddie Freeman's superhero variation is played by Adrian Brody, and he is having the time of his life as a Shazam-powered superhero. And so there's an interesting juxtaposition there, but God, it is just such a crowded movie, and so your focus is constantly going from this character to this character. And meanwhile, in the middle of all this is Zachary Levi, who's got this motto of we are all together or not at all, and he's really trying to keep everybody together. He's holding on to everybody. He really wants the family to do everything together, and you can see him working very hard, and that's called upon for the character in this film. But also it feels like Zachary Levi isn't having as much fun as he was having in the first movie, where it was all just this little kid becoming a big kid, like the old classic Big movie, and he was just being joyous and silly and goofy and having fun with his powers. He attempts to get there, but I think what undermines that a little bit is all of these kid actors from the first Shazam are not kids anymore. They're all growing up, and it doesn't feel quite as genuine that they were going to be as innocent in their superhero forms. You know, they're going to be a lot more mature and a lot wiser. And so it feels a little bit more forced, all of that energy and all of that performance there for Zachary Levi, who I truly believe he's giving everything he can to the role. Everybody is. Everybody's working their butts off to make something very entertaining here. But I just found it cacophonous and crazy and overstuffed. And as much as I was impressed by the visuals and the efforts there from the effects artists to really level up on their previous work, I found it overwhelming and not that fun and not that joyous. And I think there's just too many elements in here. We've got Lucy Liu and Helen Mirren. We've got connections and threads to previous DC projects in this movie. And of course, there's an after-credits sequence, which is kind of fun and kind of charming. But I think the other element in the whole Shazam property is that it is deep. It stretches back decades in comics lore, but I don't know how relevant it is for modern media consumers. I don't know if they're really, dug into all of the history and the lore and all the inner workings of all of these different characters and what they all mean and how they matter. I admire that they have carved out their own kind of section of the DC universe, and perhaps this franchise is going to be safe from whatever Peter Safran and James Gunn are thinking about for the future of DC, and maybe we're going to see more Shazam work. I don't know. Peter Safran, coincidentally, is a producer on this movie, so maybe if this movie does well, it will warrant further sequels and stuff. But I had this thought watching this film. I mean, if you're going to have this many characters in it, and it's about family and it's about connection, this is way better material for a series, and allowing people to kind of breathe with these characters and this work and letting us kind of get into the history and the background. I mean, this is a character based around ancient mythology and getting the power of all of these different gods. So right there, you're just dealing through layers and layers and layers of exposition to get to the action elements in the film. And I found it overwhelming. And I'm kind of familiar with the Shazam world. I used to watch the old TV show when it was in syndication, and I've read Shazam comics. I've picked up Shazam action figures in the past, but I don't know if the world loves this universe as much as a comics nerd like myself. I think it succeeds in further embellishing the lore and giving us more from this franchise and introducing some new directions for where we could carry on. But I really believe that this property would be much better served as a series. As a film, I think it's going to be a pretty messy movie for most people, and I don't know how it's going to do comparative to the first film. I don't think it's going to be as successful as the first film. I don't know if it's going to be as memorable as the first film, but because there is so much stuff in it, I want to see it again. I want to get all of the weird nuance and all of the details and stuff that people worked really hard to put into this picture. I certainly didn't enjoy it as much as the first Shazam movie, but I'll tell you somebody who also loved that first Shazam movie. That was my daughter, Ruby, and I wanted to ask her what she thought of Shazam Fury of the Gods. Hey, Ruby, what did you think of Shazam Fury of the Gods?
I really liked it. One thing I wasn't a huge fan of was when they started flying away, it just looked like they selected the character and then just pasted it like an animation of just doot 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 getting higher every second.
So they just took it out of frame.
Yeah, it didn't really look like he was flying. It just looked like he was just getting picked up and just taken away.
What were your favorite characters in the film?
And she was one of the daughters of the Atlas, the youngest.
What was your favorite part of the movie?
Well, they had a very interesting take on ancient mythology, and I really liked their interpretation of unicorns.
What did you think of the visual effects overall? You didn't like the flying, but did you like the way that the movie looked?
I mean, there was a lot of blowing up things. It was okay, but it's hard to mess up blowing up, but they didn't do a very good job. I think they could have spent more time and more money on it.
Which of the characters from the Shazam family do you like the most?
Freddie Freeman.
Why is that?
Because he is a main part of this movie. He's very put into the spotlight in this movie, and I mean, honestly, none of the other characters were, so I can't really say they were my favorite characters. I really like the youngest girl, though, too.
Darla.
Yeah, Darla.
How did this movie compare to the first movie?
Compared to the first movie, it was not good at all, but it was still good. They jam-packed it. It honestly felt like I was watching the movie for 6 hours, and it was 2 hours. It would have made a better 6-hour movie.
Or a show.
Or a show.
Don't you think it should be a show?
Yep, that would be good too.
Okay. So what would you score Shazam Fury of the Gods?
I give Shazam Fury of the Gods a 7 out of 10.
Thanks, Ruby. I'm going to give Shazam Fury of the Gods a 6 out of 10. All right, spoiler alert time. Don't watch this next part if you don't want any spoilers. Now, let's talk a little bit about the spoilery pieces that are cool in this movie that I caught. And of course, the big one is that Wonder Woman is in this movie in a very prominent way. It's not just this tacked on scene. Wonder Woman actually brings Shazam back to life, which is a pretty significant piece of storytelling right there, because of course she has God powers. She is the daughter of Zeus, and so she is able to resuscitate Shazam after he falls fighting the Daughters of Atlas, which I thought was a really cool story beat and a great connective tissue to previous DC work. But what's weird is we don't know what's going to happen with the future of DC and what James Gunn might be thinking about for Wonder Woman or Shazam and where this might lead, which I thought was pretty crazy. And then the other big spoilers obviously have to do with the after credits sequences. There are two of them. The first one, we see Harcourt and Economos recruit Shazam to become part of the Justice Society, and Shazam is questioning why there's a Justice League and a Justice Society, which I thought was pretty funny. And of course, the big thing is Jennifer Holland plays Agent Harcourt, and she's part of the Peacemaker show. She was in the Suicide Squad. She's also James Gunn's wife, and so this leads me to think that, yeah, there could be a real possible future for Shazam. Maybe he does join the Justice Society, and a big part of the storytelling in Shazam Fury of the Gods is to have these characters let each other go and lead their own singular lives in direct opposition to Shazam's desire to keep everybody together. And so maybe this is the conduit to Shazam moving away and becoming part of the Justice Society in a future film or a future project down the road. But if they do stay with the family, I really want them to think about a series with the Shazam family. I think that would be great. The other big after credits sequence has to do with Mark Strong returning as Dr. Sivana, and he's talking to the very smart worm, Mr. Mind, and they have a somewhat comical sequence. But I really enjoyed Mark Strong in the first Shazam film. I enjoy Mark Strong in almost everything that I've seen the guy in. He's an awesome actor, and he was absolutely incredible as Sinestro in that Green Lantern movie, which was a big disappointment. So it'd be cool to see Dr. Sivana return. It does feel like DC is setting us up for more, and I wouldn't be unhappy about that. I think there is a lot of story for DC to dig into with the Shazam property, but this movie was just way too crowded and way too messy. Let's see if I dig it more the next time that I see it. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know what you thought of Shazam Fury of the Gods in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. We'll see you soon, and until then, play forever.